I hate the Tiger hole. But today, LEGO Tank 007 is going to have one of the best, not just Tiger games, but one of the best Tier 8 replays I've ever seen. And he's going to do that in perhaps one of the least likely candidates. Welcome to the video. My name's Lad, and let's jump into it. Today, LEGO Tank really loves this tank. He's running the Tiger prototype. This tank was released relatively recently, and it's basically a Tiger hull with a 128mm gun. Now you might say that sounds a lot like the Tier 9 Tiger, and you would definitely be right on that account. World of Tanks, in its early infancy stage, actually had two Tigers. There was the Tiger 8.8, and that was actually, I believe, my first Tier 8 premium tank. That tank had the Tiger hull and a gun that shot very, very quickly. It had 230 alpha damage, and it had fantastic damage per minute. However, it has always been held back by a really, really shockingly awful hull, and a gun that just doesn't have enough penetration to serve the tank destroyer role. However, World of Tanks, its Tier 9, had a phenomenal gun. If you've never played the Tier 9 Tiger, it really is a treat. It has one of the best guns, I think, of the game. At least when I played it years ago, it was so comfortable to deal with. And so Wargaming has decided to create a Tier 8 version of the Tiger with substantially less damage per minute, but still a chunky, healthy gun that does a lot of damage per shot. This tank has 490 alpha per shot, right in line with something like a Scorpion. And while this isn't as strong as the 560 from the Tier 9 variant, this is much better than the 230 alpha damage that the Tiger 8.8 boasts. And so, in this replay, you're going to see that with a fair amount of shells, but not too many shots, the LEGO Tank's going to add up the damage very, very quickly. Notice right there, his gun depression is failing him. That's because the Tiger doesn't have great gun depression. It doesn't have great traverse on its gun, and it's just painfully slow. If you take a look here, he's loading in some gold shells, and he goes straight through the superstructure of the Tiger prototype. That's because if your opponents load gold, about 80% of the Tiger prototype's armor just becomes an instant green for all of your opponents. This tank really has atrocious armor on the lower plate. It's truly awful there. It has very mediocre armor onto that upper plate, and even the superstructure is not all that strong compared to what it absolutely could be. If your opponents have 280, 290 millimeters of penetration, and a ton of Tier 8, Tier 9, and Tier 10 tanks do, then they're going to shred, absolutely shred through your tank's armor. Admittedly, the mantlet will bounce some shells, but it just isn't enough for a Tier 8 tank. However, when you're hitting for this much alpha damage, that was 498, it does force your opponents to back off in a way that the Tiger 8.8 doesn't have to deal with whatsoever. And already in this replay, LEGO Tank is up to 4,000 damage. I should also make note of what LEGO Tank's doing. He adores this tank, clearly. He's actually running a full bond setup. He has a bond rotation mechanism, he has a bond turbo, and he's got a bond rammer on this tank. This is nearly the max amount of DPM you'll ever see in a Tiger 8.8, and it's about as fast as you'll ever see too. With rotation mechanism, he definitely turns much faster, and with the improvement to his engine, to his top speed, this is much more mobile than you'll traditionally see. Most Tiger 8.8s are going to be running this with just standard equipment, and so the bond equipment definitely does help out. Also, of note, LEGO Tank's getting very lucky with a lot of these bounces. He's blocked 4,300, and that's likely because his opponents, for example the T-103, the SMV, are firing regular ammunition. And so, yes, 1 in a million games, you'll have things go your way, but this is just not standard World Tanks gameplay in 2024. You should expect far, far more premium shells like what he's firing right here into the SMV, and you should expect to get penetrated left, right, and center. However, he is still blocking shells from his opponents, and the tank has enough armor to be useful in a few different situations. Right here, the excellent gun of the Tiger prototype is allowing him to put in absolute work. He penetrates anything he looks sideways at, and he hits them for 490 a pop. That's just fantastic alpha damage. Always has been, likely always will be at tier 8, and it absolutely racks up very, very quickly. Now, it should be noted, with a hull that turns this slowly, and you can see right here, even with all his bond equipment, that is a slow rotation speed. This tank is not quick, and if you can imagine how easy this thing is to double track, putting shots right here through the front wheel is incredibly easy, and it's something you have to try to mitigate. The Jagdtiger often does not do well in close quarter engagements. If you have open space all around you, your opponents can flank around, they will be faster than you, and you'll be in a world of hurt. Poor show right there by Lego Tank, but hopefully it won't matter as he goes forward. As I was saying, this tank does much better in the quarter situations where it can stay, hold down, hopefully use its superstructure to its benefits, and just slam in shells. Right here, Lego Tank really was in the perfect situation. Being up in this window allowed him to be hold down quite consistently, and that allowed him a ton of easy and free shots, and allowed him to use his very good damage per minute against his opponents. Now he's pushing in against this VK. This VK can still penetrate him if it aims for the lower plate, but luckily for our hero, the VK isn't smart enough to do that, and he cleans up his 5th kill and the victory. That was 8,890 damage, and he barely broke a sweat. Lego Tank 007 comments on his replay, the Jagdtiger H global damage record, and it really was. This is the most damage I could find on this tank by far, and I believe the most that has ever been committed. He also mentions that yes, this is the blocked damage record as well. He was in the dream situation. He racked up a ton of damage just by shooting a hole down at tanks with not enough penetration or not enough wherewithal to aim for his superstructure with heat, and so he absolutely farmed. This is a 1 in a million game, and shows that nearly any tank has its day to shine if it's played by a strong player like Lego Tank is, and if it's put in the right situation. But I would caution you, if you're looking at buying this in the months ahead when Wargaming is certain to be selling it, I would recommend heavily against it. There are so many better options. There's so many tanks that actually have mobility or have real armor or have real DPM. And the Jagdtiger H just does none of these as well as its peers. Yes, it's got some armor. It's got some mobility. It's got a good gun. But you can find better guns. You can find much better mobility. You can find better armor. And I think you'd be much better served by pursuing much better tanks. Admittedly, it is still a premium tank, and he comes out with 147,000 credit profit. Admittedly, he must have some booster running on at the moment, but still a fun replay and a blessing to see that every tank can have its moment. With that said, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to be eligible for our giveaway. That should be coming up as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers. And with that said, I'm Lad, and I'm out.